Hello, everyone. Against my better judgment, probably, I am going to dissect the Black Women Divest movement, colorfully nicknamed by me as the Pick Me's Going Their Own Way movement, or PGTOW for short. Like all conservative so-called movements, the fulcrum of divestment consists of mainly three things: anti-Blackness, patriarchy, and capitalist ideology. Let's begin. I decided to wade into this pool of putridness because I'd seen a couple tweets pop up on my timeline highlighting anti-Black fuckery from Black women accounts. Now, being an older millennial on the internet, I'm well aware of white supremacists' penchant for making accounts en masse pretending to be Black people, just to cause chaos and misery to everyone everywhere. If you don't believe me, Google Operation Lollipop. The very fuckery born in 4chan rooms that gave rise to its counter-effort by Black feminists like Fiqua, Black Amazon, So True, and countless others. #your slip is showing. So naturally, looking through the content posted by these accounts, my wisest sense was tingling something fierce. But then I thought to myself, Black women who hate being Black do exist. For example, Kundis Owens and Tree of No Logic, two Black conservative women who've made their online career hating their own ethnic group and who happen to hate each other last I checked. Funny shit, but I digress. Like all conservative movements, this divestment movement, aka Pick-me's going their own way, obfuscates its true intent behind the benign idea of Black women empowerment. More specifically, Black women of the PMC, professional managerial class, aka middle and higher class, putting important time and attention back into themselves, addressing their personal needs and decentering focus on men. When one shaves the self-help wool off this sheep, however, you'll find the wolf. At worst, anti-Blackness towards cis-hetero Black men, and at real worst, a pipeline and shield for the regurgitation of white supremacist, capitalist, patriarchal ideology. PGTOWs accept and perpetuate white supremacist propaganda about their own people, weaponizing it towards Black men specifically. But they'll also use it towards anyone within a community who calls them out on their bullshit. And when doing so, PGTOWs, like all conservative reactionaries, try to co-opt leftist or revolutionary praxis and terms like pick-me's to describe Black women activists and feminists. A play from the conservative reactionary playbook to create negative public associations with certain terms, like how that conservative so-called think tank, the Manhattan Institute, has been able to do with the term critical race theory. Like all conservative movements, the PGTOW movement is a grift taking advantage of material issues Black women and girls deal with: misogynoir, colorism, surviving capitalism, navigating dating, relationships, family rearing, and so on. Its proponents claim to offer answers, advice, and empowerment, yet all that's offered is the status quo: patriarchal ideology, aka sexism, misogyny, and anti-queer bigotry, anti-Blackness, and classism. According to PGTOWs, the only solution to escaping the misogynoir, abuse, and violence Black women and girls deal with from Black men and boys is to cut Black men and boys out mostly or pretty much entirely of our lives as dating and marriage partners. Divestors try to hide their anti-Blackness by spouting off surface statistics about the dating chances for PMC Black women, while wholly ignoring the reasons for these stats in the first place. Racism. It is true that for many PMC Black women, they may have a hard time finding Black men with matching levels of education and employment to pair up romantically with. And that's because large numbers of Black men have been subject to the prison industrial complex, therefore unable to acquire higher education due to their felony status, nixing access to financial aid. Not to mention the whole Black men and boys dealing with higher mortality rates due to white supremacist violence from the state. Divestors won't ever acknowledge these factors because it refutes the white supremacist narrative of Black men's supposed inherent inferiority they're parroting. They'll just suggest to PMC Black women they open up their dating and marriage preferences by going to date and marry white men, also known as swirling. Like, they don't even try to hide it. Okay, girl, finna help you set up this Bumble account. Who you trying to get in them guts? White guys. Okay. So, Latino guys, Asian guys. Nope. White guys only. Oh, just white. So, okay. French guys, German guys, Irish guys. Girl, I do not care. As long as they're white, they're all right, okay? I'm sick of dating these bullet bags. I'm sick of these dingy nothings. I'm sick of these dusty niggas. Just white guys. White. All right, Megan. Since PMC Black women are more likely to encounter white men with matching education and employment, divestors believe PMC Black women should just participate in hypergamy via dating and marrying solely white men, as this means they'll be most likely matched with someone with shared or higher socioeconomic status. Even if a Black woman isn't part of the professional managerial class, that's no issue, because divestors are there to help us lower class Blackistan pick-me's mold ourselves into the perfect, traditionally feminine object for white men with disposable income to acquire. So much for decentering men! The only men divestors are interested in decentering are Black men, and in the worst ways. Their go-to tactics include blaming Black men for their own oppression from white supremacy. A Black man or a Black boy gets murdered by the state. They were obviously worthless brutes who deserved what they got because of how badly they treat Black women and girls. Referring to Black men and boys by racist dog whistles, such as bullet bags, nakers, dirty dicks, apes, and didn't do nothings, to perpetuate white supremacist dogma about their inherent inferiority as opposed to non-Black men. Basically pulling a reverse MRA MGTOW move by blaming Black men and boys for all that ails Black people racially and socioeconomically because they've failed to uphold hierarchical gender dictates as prescribed by patriarchy and its ideology. Perpetuate classism via suggesting that Black women stop engaging with, quote, dusty Black men, aka poor working class Black men. Or just write off Black men entirely and date non-Black men, referring to poor and working class Black people as ghetto, pejoratively, and their neighborhoods as Blackistan, reifying the toxic idea of Black pathology. Along with peddling Black pathology and laying the blame for all of it on Black men and boys, divestors also peddle an anti-trans bigotry, Transmisogyny specifically. Like most conservatives, divestors refuse to accept material and empirical scientific reality that trans women are women, attempting to hide their contempt for trans women via language using terms like biological Black woman or biologically born women to refer to cisgender Black women. And since they don't accept trans women as women, any cisgender heterosexual man who has sex with trans women are apparently at best pansexual or at worst gay.
It's almost like the general face of trans womanhood is becoming Black trans women, you know, and although I think there's room for them, right? I'm not very fond of them and society in general trying to equalize them to biologically born women. And that's what I see happening time and time again when these situations come up. And that's what I want to talk about here, because I really do feel like the distinction needs to be made, okay? And I'm not saying that most people don't already make the distinction, but I do see trans women getting really upset when the distinction is made, and that I don't really agree with. We have the right to make the distinction, even if you as a trans woman don't make the distinction, okay? And I know I got some, LGBT people following me. I love y'all, but you are not exempt from criticism, okay? And I have to call this out. And I understand why you guys are so sensitive to criticism. I don't believe in people going out of their way to, disrespect trans women or anything like that. But you're still not exempt from constructive criticism. And I'm going to, be respectful. I don't feel the need to call you guys a bunch of names, or, if you want to be identified as a woman, call you him and he. I don't do all that. But anytime I see these situations come up, I see a theme with transgender people. And they always say that men who like trans women are straight. And I hear the same thing with women who like trans men. They consider those women to be straight. And I think straight people who are attracted to transgenders want this to be true because they don't like to be labeled as gay, right? So, if they're attracted to a trans person, they just want to say, oh, well, I'm straight. I see them like I see anybody else, but it's not true. You're not straight. And maybe gay isn't the right label, but you're definitely not straight if you're attracted to transgenders. Me personally, I would call these people pansexuals.
Love to break it to Chrissy and to all the other trans music black folks out there. Gender identity and sexual orientation are two distinct different things. They are not the same, and therefore they are not interchangeable. Your sexual orientation is who you are physically, romantically, and emotionally attracted to. Your gender identity is who you are. I, Foxy, am a cisgender, bisexual woman. Cisgender woman, meaning that my gender identity matches up with the body I was originally born into, for the most part. I am bisexual, meaning I am sexually, romantically, and emotionally attracted to people of two or more genders. Men, women, intersex folks, MBs. Doesn't matter. Dominique Jackson is a transgender heterosexual woman. Transgender woman, meaning her gender identity didn't match up with the body she was originally born with, hence undergoing various gender-affirming measures to address it. Dominique is heterosexual, meaning she is sexually, romantically, and emotionally attracted to men. Heterosexual men don't stop being heterosexual just because the women they're dating or having sex with are trans. So to say otherwise is not only scientifically and factually inaccurate, but deeply transmisogynistic and very homomesic. Especially given our community's issues with queerness. Like, this shit taps directly into the whole down low queer moral panic that still exists within our communities, thanks to the ongoing HIV/AIDS pandemic. By adhering to and policing other women and men by patriarchal ideologies' dictates for compulsory manhood and womanhood, divesters prove Bell Hooks correct when she said that patriarchy has no gender. I'm not surprised that divestors don't know the difference between gender and sexual orientation. It just annoys me to no end when folks who barely passed biology in high school suddenly want to become biologists and endocrinologists when it comes to trans people, attempting to wade in biological and social sciences that are way above their pay grade. But then they get upset when you call them cis, short for cisgender, the correct scientific term that describes them. You're talking out of both sides of the mouth. You can't have it both ways, guys. You can't posture yourselves to be so smart and then participate in anti-intellectual nonsense just because, factual science refutes your cognitive biases and bigotries. Sorry. Well, no, not sorry. Now, I'm not saying that lay people cannot understand or interpret scientific data. What I am saying is that divestors have a staked interest in regurgitating antiquated information because it gives them a pedestal over another oppressed group in the hierarchical and bioessentialist hegemonic social order. And preaching to the patriarchal white supremacist choir will always net you more social and parasocial benefits than standing against it. This divestment rhetoric is nothing new, really. These talking points have been around since 2010, thanks to folks like one Crystalline Karazin, creator of the blog site Beyond Black and White, and chief proponent of swirling. Remember that whole no wedding, no womb thing? An anti-Black, patriarchal, and classist movement that put the onus on Black women to end the supposed crisis of out-of-wedlock births by essentially pulling a Chirac, withholding sex from cis-hetero men until they conform to patriarchal dictates of marriage before sex. Yeah, that was her brainchild. And all because Karazin, who herself comes from a middle-class two-parent home and grew up in the PMC her whole life, was denied the patriarchal promised land of compulsory marriage from her then Black partner when she was 24 and pregnant. Karazin's rhetoric has become much more callous over the years, though, as I previously stated, she and others like her obfuscates her anti-Blackness via self-help conversational language of letting go of the idea of supposedly being culturally obligated to only date and marry other Black people and suffer, aka the Black struggle or struggle love. Now, while given the nature of race relations in a white supremacist settler colonial nation, naturally, dating within one's own ethnic group can be said to be something of a cultural obligation. Maybe, but not more than it's just a statistical reality. While the existence of interracial marriages did rise to about 10% from the year 2000 to 2016, the truth is, most people still date and marry within their own ethnic and socioeconomic groups. White people especially. Not to mention, marrying outside one's ethnic group doesn't mean that you'll end up with someone without their own internalized white supremacist notions about Black people, because anti-Blackness is a feature of American culture, not a bug. Also, what does it say about how divestors see themselves as Black people when they wage in anti-Blackness towards Black men and boys? You are not the exception to the rule, because the rules are bullshit, sweethearts. And you are only as useful to the system as long as you continue to peddle in hate of your own people. No genuine measure of self-love and investment prospers when the fulcrum of it is based on anti-Blackness and self-hate, which is what makes recent events within this so-called movement even more funny to witness. Recently, Karazin and YouTuber Chrissy have made videos taking issue with some in the divestment movement because of, at best, the focus on anger towards Black men, and at worst, the racist tones divestors tend to engage in.
When divestment is your identity, it is who you are, you want everybody to know about it. You have the zeal of the newly converted. But divestment, at its core, should be about realizing and working through your anger, your frustration, your disappointment. It shouldn't be a recurring loop in your head, like when you like a really cool song that you want to play on repeat over and over and over again, forever and ever, amen? That's not what I'm talking about. We all go through the divestment phase. We go through the phase of being angry, feeling less than, feeling rejected. And so we decide we don't want any more of that. We want to move past that. And so we make certain decisions based on abandoning a set of rules, cultures, and communities that don't serve us. And one thing that we do is we move away from the restrictions of relationships when it comes to what people expect or who people expect Black women to be and be with. It's not about the men, but what divestment as an identity has become for some of us is the identity of hating the men that you used to love. So what is the point of going through all of the stress, the pain, and the grief of moving yourself from a community that is male-focused, based on love and protection, only to jump to another community where those same males are still your focus? So when I've been saying and talking about transcendence, I'm talking about going through the phase of the anger that we all go through. I understand it. I have been there. I understand what it means to not be the preference. I understand what it means to not feel celebrated. I understand what it means to just be tolerated, but have all of these expectations on you. I get it. And you have every right to be angry. You have every right to feel rejected. You have every right to feel a loss. And so feel the feels. But here's where transcendence comes in. Transcendence comes in when you're going through that phase. You go through it and you get over it. And then you thrive.
This is nonsensical. No true sense of transcendence can take place when the fulcrum of your self-improvement journey foundation makes no logical sense and is based on such toxic tenets like hate for yourself and your own people. And yes, writing off the entirety of your own people as romantic and sexual partners because of your experiences with a number of them is self-hate, as well as anti-Black as fuck. Again, any foray into self-improvement and self-care that doesn't address this is vacuous and a half measure.
This is not a divested or swirling channel. This is a Black woman first space that centers dark-skinned women. That's it, and that's all. So when it comes to my channel, I'm here to discuss media representation, colorism, Black people, white people, non-Black people, and everything else or anything else that affects the well-being of dark-skinned women or the image of dark-skinned women, right? Now, I do, however, support and co-sign a lot of the divestment and swirling politics, and even feminist politics. That's why I put it on the thumbnail. Like, even those politics overlap with a lot of what we say here. So, and I don't think that means that I'm fence riding or anything. It just means that I'm a non-binary thinking Black woman, right? And I take different parts of different politics that I feel benefit Black women, or I feel are in the best interest of the group, or in the best interest of the group in terms of imagery and media representation. Y'all know I'm big on that.
Okay, now this is just neoliberal, individualist nonsense. Cherry pick all the different ideologies you want, but cherry picking is a logical fallacy for a reason. Chrissy is going out of her way to share misleading rhetoric, which shows her internal reasoning process is actually pretty flawed. While divestment and swirling are pretty much comorbid with each other, they are diametrically and unequivocally opposed to Black feminism. Also, you can't shake your fingers at the more virulently anti-Black divestors while engaging in the same behaviors yourself, especially when you call your own people ghetto and Blackistan. You hold the same beliefs they do. You just use less offensive sounding pejoratives behind a Black woman Afro avatar. You just call niggas dusty instead of apes and didn't do nothings. as far as I know. And trying to distance yourself from divestors and swirlers as some exception to the rule doesn't make you look like a free thinker. You look more like a coward. You're afraid to fully take a solid position because you know doing so means folks can hold you rightly accountable much easily. I was having a hard time bringing this video to a close. It is hard to press forward to liberation in solidarity when the folks you're fighting with are also the ones who end up oppressing you on the day-to-day level while trying to gaslight you that it's not happening. On top of dealing with racism and anti-Blackness from white people and other non-Black people. And misogynoir is an understandable reason as to why some Black women and girls would feel it better for them to seek romantic bonding and sexual satisfaction elsewhere. Divestors, however, take advantage of this very real material concern of Black women, and they inject white supremacist dogma into the conversation, pretty much poisoning the well. It's like they come into the conversation and they just give out all these poison pills that just serve to, preserve the status quo. They are no different from snake oil salesmen like late piece of shit and daddy to NGTOWs, Kevin Samuels, or those fresh and fit assholes. All they do is repackage white supremacy and conservative ideology for a contemporary audience, which solves nothing. Black people as an entire group, we have to let go of gender roles being inherent and compulsory, aka we must follow them. We must let go of the notion that sex assigns and strips value from human beings, that sex is inherently nasty and morally bad and only for procreation, because that's empirically untrue. Just Google bonobo apes and you'll understand that most species on this planet have sex for pleasure as much as for procreation. We have to let go of Black pathology as defined by the goddamn Moynihan report. We have to let go of definitions of family that force people into an agreement like marriage just cause. Marriage is not a compulsory destination. It is a relationship agreement that two or more people partake in if all parties desire and consent to it. There is so much unlearning that we as a people have to do and be diligent about, because it's way too easy to slip back into the status quo, because that's what's been with us for the longest. So that's what comes easiest. Not to mention that there are limited social benefits in enforcing and policing the hegemonic order. But yet folks are still so unhappy, and they keep going in circles, never fully questioning the epistemology of what they consider to be common sense or biotruth, aka the way it is. And that is the fundamental work that needs to be done.